You've heard of Dahmer, you've heard of Bundy, but this man quietly murdered at least 21 young men and boys, then stuffed their remains in trash bags like garbage. His name, Patrick Wayne Kearney. This is the story of the trash bag murderer, the most evil killer you've never heard of. Patrick Wayne Kearney was born on September 24th, 1939 in East Los Angeles. He grew up in a typical middle-class home, the son of a police officer. From the outside, nothing about his upbringing screamed killer, but looks deceive, and Kearney was no exception. As a child, he was small, sickly, and frequently the target of bullying. He became reclusive, spending hours alone in his room. He developed disturbing fantasies, violent, sexual, and always revolving around control. These dark thoughts weren't just fleeting, they became a part of him, a coping mechanism, a secret world. He also realized early on that he was gay, in a time when that alone could make you a social outcast. He didn't fit in, and the resentment festered. He later admitted that by his early 20s, he had already begun fantasizing about murder. Fast forward to the 1970s, Kearney is now in his 30s. On paper, he's doing well. He's an intelligent man with a high-paying job in engineering. He works in Southern California's booming defense industry and lives in a modest home with his long-term partner, David Hill. To neighbors, they were a quiet, private couple, nothing unusual. Kearney drove a Volkswagen Beetle, kept to himself, and was polite but distant. In short, he blended in perfectly. But behind closed doors, Kearney's twisted fantasies were boiling over. He had grown tired of fantasizing. He wanted the real thing. He found his first opportunity in the early 1970s, a young hitchhiker on the side of the road. Kearney offered him a ride. Just like that, the predator was unleashed. He developed a chilling routine: pick up a stranger, usually a teenage boy or young man, shoot them in the head within minutes of entering the car, then take the body home. There, he would sexually abuse the corpse, mutilate it, and dismember it with shocking precision. He cut the body into small, manageable pieces, placed them in industrial trash bags, and disposed of them along freeways, in canyons, or in remote desert areas. He did this not once, not twice, but over and over again, for years, and no one noticed. Why? Because he picked the perfect victims: hitchhikers, runaways, gay men whose disappearances weren't always taken seriously by law enforcement in the 1970s. His victims didn't draw headlines. They didn't have people searching night and day, and Kearney knew it. He was methodical, almost surgical, in how he disposed of bodies. There were no dramatic crime scenes, no blood-soaked rooms, no public stunts, just quiet vanishing acts, followed by the grim discovery of trash bags full of body parts days or weeks later, usually in different counties, with no forensic links. The media didn't connect the dots. The police didn't connect the dots. No one realized they were dealing with a serial killer, let alone one this organized. What made Patrick Kearney even more dangerous was how completely he masked his monstrous side. He went to work like everyone else. He had a stable partner. He paid his bills. There were no outbursts, no warning signs, no arrests, no criminal record. In fact, his own partner, David Hill, claimed he never knew anything about the murders, and later, investigators believed him. Kearney operated alone, cold, detached, calculated, and he was just getting started. By the mid-1970s, dozens of young men and boys had already died by his hand. Their final moments were spent in the passenger seat of what looked like a harmless man's car, a man with glasses, a quiet voice, a soft smile, but there was nothing soft about what came next. Patrick Wayne Kearney was a master of concealment, a predator who moved silently among ordinary people, leaving behind only black trash bags and unanswered questions. The public had no idea a serial killer was even active. Not yet. By the time most people were finishing dinner or heading to bed, Patrick Kearney was already out, cruising the California freeways in his Volkswagen, scanning the shoulders for his next victim. He had a system. It was simple, reliable, lethal. He looked for young men, teenagers, hitchhikers, or gay men leaving bars, people who were either invisible to society or wouldn't be reported missing right away. Some were as young as 5, others were in their 20s. They had different names, different faces, but they all made the same fatal mistake. They got in his car. Within minutes of driving off, Kearney would reach under his seat, pull out a .22 caliber pistol, and fire. Just one shot to the temple, quick, clean, and quiet. He didn't torture his victims. He didn't keep them captive. He wanted control, not chaos. He wanted silence. After the murder, he'd drive the lifeless body back to his home in Redondo Beach. His partner David Hill often wasn't there or claimed he never knew what was happening. Kearney would bring the body inside, undress it, and begin the second part of his ritual. He would engage in necrophilia, cold, detached routine. Then, with clinical precision, he'd dismember the body in his bathtub. He used X-Acto knives and bone saws. He knew exactly how to make the pieces small enough to fit into trash bags. Each limb, each section of torso was methodically wrapped, sealed, and disposed of in various drop spots across Southern California, Arizona, and even Mexico. Sometimes he'd take parts of the body with him on road trips, tossing remains along highways at random. These weren't trophies, these were trash in his eyes, disposable, forgettable, hence the nickname he would one day earn, the trash bag killer. But that name wouldn't come for years, because for a long time, those bags were just garbage, rotting meat in the desert, fragments of lives scattered across state lines, and no one connected the dots. The problem was simple. Law enforcement in the 70s didn't have DNA, centralized databases, or interagency cooperation like we do today. One body part found in San Diego meant nothing to a sheriff in Riverside. Another bag found near the Arizona border, likely an isolated crime, case closed. Meanwhile, Patrick Kearney just kept going. He was compulsive. He sometimes killed multiple victims in a single week. He was so addicted to the process that he once picked up a victim just hours after disposing of the last one. He later confessed to driving for hours after work, searching for someone to murder, like other people might go for a drive to clear their head, and somehow he was never stopped. No tickets, no arrests, no suspicion. He was invisible until he made a mistake. For years, Patrick Kearney's crimes went unnoticed, not because the bodies weren't found, but because they were found in pieces, and scattered, and silent. All across Southern California, police departments kept stumbling across trash bags. Inside, body parts, arms, legs, torsos, sometimes just a head. No names, no IDs, just butchered remains tossed in ditches, off overpasses, or buried in shallow desert graves. And every time, the conclusion was the same: isolated incident. Detectives had no idea they were staring at the work of a serial killer. There was no pattern, because Kearney never left one. He operated like a ghost, different locations, different victims, sometimes months apart, sometimes days. The victims had no obvious connection. One was a 13-year-old runaway, another was a 19-year-old military recruit. Some were drifters, some were gay men, some were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of them forgotten by the system. Even the way he disposed of them was strategic. He used remote sites, spaced far enough apart to confuse jurisdiction. No police department saw the full picture, and Kearney counted on that. At most, the remains sparked headlines for a few days. Human torso found in black trash bag, but the leads dried up quickly. No DNA, no witnesses, no motive. Back then, hitchhiking deaths weren't top priority, and gay victims rarely investigated with full effort. Kearney understood the blind spots in the system. He took full advantage. Some victims were never even reported missing. The LAPD, San Bernardino County, Orange County, and even authorities in Mexico were all unknowingly chasing the same man and failing over and over again. By the mid-1970s, the trash bag killer had left a horrifying breadcrumb trail across the American Southwest, and no one was connecting the dots until one victim fought back, not physically, but by leaving behind a name. His name was John LeMay, a 17-year-old who told a friend where he was going that day. He said he was heading to a guy's house in Redondo Beach, someone named Patrick. That friend later went to the police, and that single name, it cracked the entire case open. Within days, detectives traced the address to Kearney and Hill's home, but by the time they knocked, the house was empty, gone. But what Kearney didn't take with him was blood evidence. Inside the bathroom, investigators found enough trace material to confirm a violent crime had occurred. They suspected murder, even without a body. They also found photos, notes, and disturbing books on dismemberment. Now, for the first time, Patrick Kearney had a name, a face, and a target on his back. The man who had once walked invisible among the public was now the center of a multi-county manhunt. But what happened next would shock even seasoned detectives. Because Kearney didn't run far, he walked into a police station and turned himself in. On July 1st, 1977, Patrick Carney walked into the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, calm and composed, with his partner David Hill beside him. He wasn't dragged in by SWAT. He wasn't cornered in a high-speed chase. He surrendered, and what happened next was almost too surreal for detectives to believe. Without any resistance, without a lawyer, Carney sat down and confessed, not to one murder, not to two, but to 21 cold-blooded killings, one after the other, spanning nearly a decade. He gave names, dates, and even maps to where he dumped body parts. His memory was disturbingly precise. Victim Shrewd 1, he shot him in the car, drove him home, dismembered him in the tub, trash bag, freeway, done, next, and he didn't flinch. Detectives were stunned. This wasn't a ranting maniac. This wasn't someone breaking under pressure. Patrick Carney was polite, soft-spoken, helpful, even. He gave his confession like someone describing a morning routine. I'd pick them up, shoot them quickly. I didn't want them to suffer, he said, as if that somehow made it better. He told investigators how he often cruised the highways for hours after work, looking for victims. He admitted to having sex with the corpses, cutting them apart, packing them in bags, and dropping them in remote spots like they were yesterday's trash. It was all clinical, cold, no remorse, no rage, just logistics. He even drew diagrams. Police quickly confirmed many of his claims. Some of the murder locations matched old unsolved cases, trash bags found in the desert, limbs that had never been identified. Suddenly, the dots began to connect. But then came the twist. He said there were more. Carney hinted that the number wasn't 21, it could be as high as 35, but he wouldn't say exactly. Some victims, he claimed, weren't worth remembering. They were just numbers. That line, it haunted the lead detective for years. Carney was charged with 21 counts of murder. In court, he pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. The judge sentenced him to 21 consecutive life sentences, one for each confirmed victim. His partner, David Hill, was never charged. Investigators believed he had no knowledge of the killings, and Carney never implicated him. In fact, he insisted David had nothing to do with it, and to this day, Patrick Carney remains in prison, locked away at Mule Creek State Prison in California, still alive, still silent. He never gave the names of the remaining victims. He never explained why he stopped, and he never expressed regret. It wasn't an accident that led to his arrest. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. The only reason Patrick Carney was ever caught is because he chose to stop. And the scariest part, if he hadn't turned himself in, he'd probably still be out there. Patrick Wayne Carney is still alive. Now in his 80s, he sits in California's Mule Creek State Prison, serving 21 consecutive life sentences. No parole, no chance of release, and yet his name rarely makes headlines. No documentaries, no Hollywood dramatizations, no Netflix specials. Why? Because Carney didn't fit the image of a serial killer. He wasn't loud like Bundy. He wasn't twisted like Gacy. He didn't crave fame like Ramirez. He was invisible, a man who killed methodically, silently, and with such precision that he evaded capture for nearly a decade. A man who dismembered his victims with calm detachment and tossed them out like garbage. A man who turned the freeway system into a dumping ground. He left no notes, no manifestos, no legacy, just bodies in bags, and names most people will never know. Some of those names still haven't been found, because even though Carney confessed to 21 murders, he hinted that there were more, as many as 35. Who were they? Where were they left? He never said, and he never will. He's refused all interviews. He's refused to talk to journalists. And as the years pass, the chances of ever learning the full truth fade away. Patrick Carney isn't just one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. He's one of the least known. You've just heard the story of the trash bag killer, a man who walked among us, unnoticed, unbothered, and unstoppable until he chose to stop himself. If this story disturbed you, it should. Subscribe to the channel for more real crime stories the world forgot, because monsters don't always hide under the bed. Sometimes they drive a Volkswagen, smile politely, and disappear into the crowd.